Hello and welcome to another TV Central podcast. I'm Aaron Ryan. There's been some great chats as of late. We recently had a chat with Chief Programming Officer at 10, David Mott, and Head of ABC Television, Kim Dalton. Today we shift our attention to the 7 Network. Director of Television and Production at 7, Tim Warner, is here with us, literally hours before taking annual leave, and I extend my thanks from the beginning for taking the time to chat. Tim, welcome and thanks for joining me at TV Central.
No problems. Thanks.
All right, well, let's jump straight in. 9 have tried to up their game this year, but it's been a great year for 7. 7 continue to be the number one broadcaster in 2010 on primary channels and even on combined channel shares. 7 has won more weeks and more nights in prime time on primary channels year to date. Tell us about those results and what you attribute 7's continued success.
Look, I guess we just keep battling away at it. It's funny, you work hard to get to a leadership position, and then once you're there, it gets a little bit harder staying there. But we've managed to do that for the last few years, and yeah, we just keep working away at it and not really worrying too much about what others are doing around us, just setting our course and sticking with it.
Yeah, well, I do want to talk about some of 7's results this year, but the first thing, has to be probably the biggest question for you. Who's going to win the grand final this weekend? Where's the money going on?
I think Collingwood are looking absolutely invincible. I think they're calling their brand of football Mixcreed. Now, because Malthouse has got them going like a machine. However, St Kilda are there and anything can happen. And I noticed that in the Waffle Grand Final last week, Claremont were unbackable hot favourites and Swan Districts rolled them in the very last minute. So anything can happen. I'll certainly be barracking for St Kilda because, like a lot of people, Collingwood are somewhere near the bottom of my list of favoured AFL teams.
And so, who is your favourite in the AFL? You're a Perth boy with a...
I am a Perth boy, but I'm a Swans man because I like to be able to take my boys to see their team play. And I've been living over here for sort of over 20 years now. And, yeah, I've been a Swans man for quite a while.
All right, well, I'm putting Collingwood 32 points. Now, I understand the game is being shot in high definition and 3D. Can you tell us how people can access the game in 3D?
Well, you'd need a 3D television to see it in 3D. Or the other way is that I think Roadshow Films are showing it in various theatres across the country in 3D.
All right, and in relation to accessing the game on various platforms, it can be seen on analogue, digital, and on the HD channel. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. It will be broadcast on the HD channel, and then later on in that day, that channel becomes 7 Mate. Yes,
and just quickly, AFL Grand Final coverage 10:15 a.m. in Perth, 11:45 a.m. in Adelaide, and 12:15 Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane. Now, yes, on to what you're talking about. 6 p.m. on Grand Final Day, the HD channel becomes the home of 7 Mate. Now, tell us about the origin of the channel. Is that a Warner brain idea, the 7 Mate idea, and or who came up with the concept?
I don't know. I mean, look, we're a team here. That's the way we operate, and really it's been a team effort to get that channel to where it is today, which is, not that far away from launching. But the team here, in design, in promos, in publicity, in programming, have done a tremendous job to take it from where it was, which was just a sort of a notion a few months ago, to becoming a fully fledged channel. So yeah, as to the origin of it, I guess there were various options. I think it has been reported, that we certainly registered the name Mate quite a long time ago. But it was one of a number of options. I mean, obviously you can go down the movie path, you can go down a crime path. There are any number of options that you can take. Why we went for a male channel is just looking around the world at various markets. The track record of male channels is quite strong, but not so much that. Just in the fireside chats that we had with big advertisers prior to announcing Seven Mate, it was obvious that there was a hunger for a male channel. We believe there is a gap in the market and that we can fill that gap. And that's a gap for viewers, young male viewers, and also a gap for advertisers who want to reach young male viewers. They would probably be considered the most elusive demographic, and because they are the most elusive demographic, they're the most precious and therefore the most valuable. So why wouldn't we set up a channel that is designed to attract them? We know a fair bit about young males in terms of their media consumption. They're probably the lightest viewers of television. They would come into television for sort of one show. It might be Family Guy on the main channel and then leave again, or they might stay for American Dad after it and then leave again. We know they don't read many magazines other than probably Men's Health or Tracks or a few sort of sports magazines. We know that they go to the movies a fair bit, and we know, of course, that they go online quite regularly. However, once they're online, they tend to wander around a lot. And again, that contributes to this elusiveness. They're very hard to reach, very hard to hit with a message. So what we are doing with Seven Mate is creating not just a brand, but also a destination, a place where they can go, and hopefully a brand to which they can become loyal. And hopefully once we get them there, we can keep them there. The idea is to aggregate these young males in the one place. And if we're able to pull that off, it's certainly going to be something that is attractive to advertisers. It already has been attractive to advertisers. A lot of people, as soon as we announced the channel, were on the phone straight away trying to find out, what they could do to get their brand snuggling up to the Seven Mate brand.
Well, some of those shows that are coming for people that are listening, you did mention Family Guy and American Dad, which new episodes Wednesday night, and I think there's some repeats on other nights of the week as well. Last Comic Standing, Crank Yankers, Monster Garage, Fifth Gear, Punk'd, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, Caprica, Warehouse 13, Gene Simmons' Family Jewels. So there's some of the titles there. Now, on some nights, like for example, Saturday nights on 7-2, you've achieved over a 7% share, audience share. So what expectations do you have as Seven Mate in terms of audience ratings, and also when the analog switch off actually happens, do you see these channels increasing sharply, or do you still think that the main channel is the main game?
The main channel will always be the main game. There is absolutely no question about that. The big red train, that big red 7, will always be the primary concern. It will always be the primary channel. However, as you've sort of said there, on some nights, Saturdays for 7-2, we're seeing very big shares in some cases that are bigger than some of the other networks' primary channels. Do I see that sort of a situation happening every night of the week? No, I don't. I think it's going to become increasingly about the quality of the audience on these digital channels and not so much the quantity of them.
And just an interesting trend with Channel 10 announcing their new channel, Channel 11, is that their stance basically, or their tagline is what stays on 11 remains on 11. Now, Go quite often use their popular shows for reruns like Big Bang Theory and Top Gear and 2.5 Men, that's just playing everywhere. 7 not so much doing that, but they are using some of their older shows on both channels. For example, Scrubs can be seen on both 7 and 7 2, and possibly 7 Mate as well. Do you have any clear policy going forward, like 11, such as what plays on 7 Mate stays on Mate, or is it a program by program basis on where shows stay, or if they're on both 2 channels or 3 channels?
Yeah, look, I don't think we have any hard and fast rules like that, that's for sure. There are probably guidelines. I don't think you're going to see a situation at 7 like a Top Gear or a Big Bang or a 2.5 Men where, Top Gear I think's up to over 100 episodes broadcast this year. 2.5 Men I think's over 250 episodes, maybe more. You're not going to see that sort of thing. But having said that, I think there will definitely be cases where you will see a show that is on the primary channel and is also on either 7 2 or 7 Mate. But yeah, more of a guideline and certainly not a hard and fast rule.
Excellent. Any other titles that you want to mention coming to 7 Mate, apart from what's already been announced?
We're looking at a bunch of stuff now and heading over to Cannes in the next few weeks. So, it's likely that there will be some new titles. Jersey Shore will certainly be coming to 7 Mate next year. And, yeah, you can stand by for a couple of other announcements.
All right. Well, 7 Mate launches this Saturday night after the grand final, 6 p.m. Just 1 or 2 questions about 7 2. Now, this is just an observation, but I'm just asking, has 7 2 lost its identity, or did it need to change because of 7 Mate? Where I'm coming from is 7 2 started off with the theme nights, action nights, comedy nights, girls nights, guys nights, but now they're sort of playing a lot of British stuff. You got kids movies on Thursday nights, then sort of a random mix on Tuesdays. So I guess the question is, what is 7 2?
Well, we've always been pretty clear that 7 2 is an alternative to 7, and that's the way we set it up. And I don't think we've departed too much from that guideline, even though, as you say, there is a fair bit of British drama on there. The reason we're playing more of it is because viewers are showing they want it. I mean, the British dramas are drawing a very big audience on 7 2. And again, it's this quality audience. I mean, the detractors of the audience will say, oh, they're just all old. But in fact, A, they're not all that old. And B, there are a lot of high income earners amongst that audience. It's a more probably discerning viewer that is being attracted to that sort of programming. And I see that probably as being the way 7 2 will be positioned in the future. But it is still largely an alternative to 7. And yes, there have been some changes to the programming on the channel, but only in response to the viewers' appetites. What we're trying to do is cater to what they want. And I have to say that channel has continued to grow week by week. It is the number 1 digital channel 25 plus. And, that's something that is a key goal for the channel. And the changes have been, as I say, only due to what the viewers are telling us they want.
Right. And have you got any other titles coming up for 7 2 that you can mention?
Look, I think you can expect to see some more lifestyle blocks on 7 2 because, again, viewers are showing us that's what they want. On Friday nights after Better Homes and Gardens on 7 2, a certain percentage of that audience is going over to
Escape to the Country.
Is going to 7 2 to watch more lifestyle. So I think, again, just listening to what the viewers want, you're probably likely to see more of that. And also we're seeing that advertisers are wanting that sort of programming as well. But look, there'll be more British drama and more British comedy because, again, the audience is telling us that's what they want.
And so with all these multi-channels on now, just a question, will there be a summer non-ratings period for these channels, or are you expecting to continue sort of first-run content through summer?
Mate, there is no non-ratings period that I'm aware of. Let me just say that. We get ratings every day at 8:30, and that includes Christmas Day. And that's the way we're set up. And certainly I regard what might be referred to as the traditional non-ratings period as a bit of an opportunity for those digital channels. It's a time when the competition might not be as fierce as it normally is during the other 42 weeks of the year or whatever it is. So therefore there's a chance to attract people to the regular programming on those digital channels. So yeah, if there's a non-ratings period, please someone let us know about it.
Well, I mean, there has to be a non-ratings period. I mean, you're not showing Packed to the Rafters and Desperate Housewives and Criminal Minds and all that sort of first-run content. So, I mean, that's where that comes from, I guess, saying there's a non-ratings period.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not a non-ratings period because we're still getting ratings. And, I mean, it's still competitive. You know, certainly we never put down the tools at 7. I mean, you know, for Christmas or for that 6 weeks. Basically, we're using that time to try things. We're using that time to get ready for 2011. And in the case of 7 Mate and 7 2, we'll be using that time to try and attract viewers to shows they might not necessarily have seen before. Yeah.
Now, stand by for one of the biggest gripes questions, but this one's aimed at all the channels, so see if we can get a response from you. It's just regarding the HD service. I mean, a lot of people want, they're getting their HD channels. That means they can see all their big programs on HD. But all of the channels are basically losing their HD service to the multi-channels. So that means all the big main shows that they want to see in HD, they can't. I'm just wondering, is that a temporary thing before the switch off, and are you expecting 7 perhaps to shift their primary channel back to HD once there's, you know, the switch off occurs?
I would expect it to be temporary, and I would expect that at some point in the future, probably all the channels will move at the same time. I don't know. I'm just making an assumption, probably using common sense more than anything else, but I would certainly hope that that's the situation.
Okay, excellent. Main channel now. I just want to have a look back, a look at now, and a look at the future. Start with Sunrise this year. It had been dominant for a very long time. It got, I would say, a bit of a scare when Lisa Wilkinson joined Today. Today started regularly winning Melbourne, but Sunrise remained dominant nationally. And now there's a new resurgence in Sunrise, regularly getting over 400k in the morning and dominating in all cities, including Melbourne. What are you putting this down to? Because I haven't seen too many on-air changes or massive changes in the last few months.
Yeah, look, shows that are on every day like that, I think it's folly to look at a very narrow band or a narrow time period and say, there's a trend here. I mean, you have to look over years, I think, with shows like that. And Sunrise has been dominant and is now again. And I think, you know, you can look at what either channel did with either show for a period of a month or 2 months. But I tend to look at shows like that are on every day over a much longer time period than even, say, 3 months or 4 months. I mean, I think you've got to look at it over years, really, because that's the name of the game with those shows.
And then following that, the morning show.
I would also say, though, that I think Sunrise is an excellent show. And the thing about the team on Sunrise is that they never really rest. They never stop trying to improve that show. They never sort of say, that's good enough. We'll just punch that out every day. There's just not that ethos amongst that group. That group is just totally geared towards continuous improvement. They're always challenging themselves to try new things on that show, or to improve the things that have worked on the show to make them work even better.
I think the fact don't seem to be just a bunch of presenters either. It really is a family. You sort of turn it on and you can see that they're all quite close and all that kind of thing too. So I think
that's right, and I think that extends both sides of the camera with that mob. It certainly does. We've got our own name for them in here, but I won't go on. Very flattering though.
Look, the morning show as well. Following that, I'm just wondering what you attribute its success to. Now, you can't sort of say, well, it's got no competition. I mean, they've got the legend of Kerry Ann as competition, and the Circle Girls are doing quite well too. But the morning show just keeps on keeping number one. I mean, what do you think that's about?
I think some of it is due to the lead-in it gets from Sunrise, but that would be unfair on the crew working on the morning show. And I'm not going to bag the shows that are against it, because I don't tend to talk about the opposition at all, their shows or their networks or anything. But I'm happy to talk about the morning show, because the reason it's number one is it is a great show. It is really well put together. It is vibrant, full of energy. Larry and Kylie work so well together, and it's entertaining. I mean, you can sit there and watch that show. I often have the volume on in my office, and you get distracted by the show. I mean, it hoovers up 10, 15 minutes at a time, because it is just so well made. It bounces along from one thing to the next. It's chock full of interesting content. You know, it's a great credit to Michael Pell and Adam. And everyone who works on that show. It is fabulously entertaining viewing, and both it and Sunrise, I mean, there are many aspects of those shows that would fit very comfortably in a primetime show.
The morning to the afternoon, Deal or No Deal, you've got to say it's got a bit of a shake from Hot Seat these days. Is it Panic Stations at 7? Would you continue with the format, try a new show, revamp it, or is it just business as usual?
No, it's pretty much business as usual. I mean, the one thing we never do is panic. I mean, why would you panic? Then you've got to deal with the panic and whatever challenge it is that you happen to be panicking about. So there's never any cause for panic. But Deal or No Deal keeps on keeping on. We were the first territory in the world to strip that show. I actually saw the creator of the show last week in Europe. He is, let me tell you, so happy that the show is continuing to do so well here in a stripped version, obviously because he makes more money out of it. But, I mean, the show does keep on keeping on. Andrew, again, keeps pushing the envelope on the show and making sure that it doesn't become too samey. Sure, it may be harder than it was, but Deal or No Deal has proved to be durable over the years, and I'm quite confident that that'll last for quite a few years yet.
And a show that is started huge and is remaining huge, still sitting around 2 million a week, packed to the rafters. I gather the ink has been signed for 2011, and I'm just asking if everyone's coming back.
We're still working through that as to whether everyone's coming back, and also I wouldn't go into that because it may be a spoiler for some people. But definitely the show is coming back. And yeah, it is still pulling on consolidated figures, because this is one of the most watched shows on PVRs. That show just belts it out of the park every week. And the audience is extremely loyal to the show. They're there week in, week out. And really, I was looking at the performance series by series. It's continued to grow each series. Bigger and bigger. There are very few dramas Australian dramas of that length that have been able to pull that off. Again, a great credit to the people involved in making that show.
Yeah, they do a great job, and not just because you're on the line here, but just for also viewers, the show after it is just one of my favourite shows on television, Parenthood. So if anyone hasn't,
I
love it.
love that show. Love that show. And it just keeps getting better. Dax Shepard, his character is just hilarious. And I just, there's something that's a bit like Brothers and Sisters, a sort of a slightly cooler version of Brothers and Sisters, but it's a bit edgier. It's certainly funnier, which is not to bag Brothers and Sisters, because that's also a great show, and that really improved last series, and I expect that to kick on. But Parenthood is a special show, and it's amazing how well that it sits with rafters.
Yeah, love it. More Australian drama now. City Homicide, not having a great run. In fact, one could say the figures were a bit disappointing. Now, I'm just wondering if you think it's the show itself, or has the police format run its course for at least 2010? I say this because it's not just City Homicide. Rush, Cops, LAC, Rescue Special Ops, they're not doing anything overly fantastic, sitting on $1 million or just under $1 million. What's going on with well, I mean, I suppose you can answer it for City Homicide or the genre in particular.
I think there's no question that the genre has become suddenly quite crowded. I mean, there are, as you've sort of listed there, a lot of Australian dramas with a lot of uniform action going on. City Homicide was the first of the sort of new breed, and enjoyed extremely strong ratings when it was on its own. Now, the ratings are still respectable, but it's certainly not rating at the level that it was when it started. Maybe the two things, those two facts, you put them together, maybe it's not a coincidence. Maybe it's become so crowded, the genre, that it's going to be hard for any one show to kick ahead. I still do think City Homicide probably leads all those other shows in terms of total audience. And again, it's a show that's heavily PVR'd, so on consolidated figures, it looks even stronger. But yeah, I guess that could be a possible reason. I'll say this about the current episodes of City Homicide: they are excellent, and they keep getting better. And the thing about that show is the performances of the artists involved. I mean, you've got, long, or veterans, I hope she doesn't mind me saying that, like Noni Hazlehurst, and Shane Bourne and David Field, these guys, and their performances are just superb on that show. And it really is the quality of the episodes is really a testament to their work. They've never dropped the ball. They've never hung their heads. They keep putting in absolutely superb work. And, I commend anyone who's dropped off that show to go back and have a look, because these episodes are at least as good as, and if not better, than the episodes that started that show.
Okay, let's move on. Look at the current schedule. X Factor started. I'm disappointed, but only for the fact that the person that I actually thought was going to win the X Factor, and I put, well, not so much my money, but thoughts behind, and thought this was going to be the one to win the X Factor, actually got eliminated first on Monday. Chris Doe, I thought he had it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the way Australia voted, and they sort of didn't see it the way you did. But
no,
look, I get into these shows, and I'm certainly into the X Factor in a big way. That's a bit sad for probably someone like me to admit, but maybe not. I mean, It Takes Two was one of my all-time favourite shows that we've ever done here at Seven. I've got my own favourite. I admit to being an Altian fan, and I hope that he lasts quite a long time and goes deep into the competition.
Were you expecting a bit more though from the X Factor? It's sitting around that 1 million mark, and it really has an uphill climb, you'd have to say, with Junior MasterChef and Com Games coming up.
It's been a little higher than that 1 million. I think that's slightly unfair. I don't want to have a blue with you, but that was the night of the Brownlow medal, which is anomalous. Looking at the show, if you look at the show market by market, it's absolutely huge in Sydney. I mean, it's doing a 27, 28 share in Sydney. So if we can get it to do that in all the other markets, we're off to the races. And I believe that is possible. I believe, just looking at the online activity with the show that keeps growing and growing, I think that, people are going to come to the show. Also, we know that people are flicking around a lot when there is strong competition against the show. The reach of the show on Monday night was over 1.6 million. So that's over 1.6 million people who've come in and watched at least some of the X Factor. And certainly, when it came time to see who was going to be eliminated, the audience really spiked. So there is a strong interest in the show. I think the show's exceptionally made. I think the guys at Fremantle have done a super job in executing the show. Simon Cowell has told them that he thinks it's actually, right up there, if not better, than the UK version. And I tend to agree with that. Also, I have to say, our show is being broadcast in New Zealand by TV3. They're using all our assets in terms of marketing. The show is absolutely huge in New Zealand. So it is a bit of a function of the competition, of the environment, but I still believe in the X Factor. I'm keeping the faith, and I'm enjoying watching it personally. My family, is certainly sitting down right on 7:30 to not miss a minute of it, and hopefully we'll see it grow.
Yeah, looking forward to it. It really is a hard one, though, in terms of the contestants on there are so good. So when you're actually watching, you just think anyone that gets eliminated is actually a shock now, as opposed to when you had Idol on, you thought, well, there's one or two favourites, and you thought, well, if they go, it's a shock. But really, at this point already, it's like anyone that goes is a bit of a shock. So definitely watching that one. I know your time is very precious at the moment, so I'll move on to just looking ahead, some of the stuff that's coming up. Beauty and the Geek, Australia coming up again. Do you have a date or day for that? Is there any format changes? What can we expect with Beauty and the Geek?
We can expect a pretty amazing cast. I've seen the cast, because obviously we cast it some time ago, and I have just this morning taken delivery of the first rough cut of episode 1, which I'll be taking on holidays with me. But just judging by the cast, I expect it to be A, heaps of fun, and B, extremely funny.
Okay. After the Com Games, I'd imagine, for that one?
Yeah.
Some of the last part of the year?
I'm not going to tell you where or when. I know you want to know, but I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, we're going to assume it's after the Commonwealth Games, but who knows where it's going to end up. You also just announced the new Australian drama for 2011, Winners and Losers. Tell us a bit more about that.
Fantastic pilot. It's from the creators of Pack to the Rafters. Bevan Lee, has written the pilot. And it is, the research on it is absolutely through the roof. It's got the same feel as Pack to the Rafters, which one might describe as a sort of charmedy. It's the story of 4 girls who at school may have been considered losers.
Yep.
And they are readying themselves for their 10-year reunion, which they attend during the pilot. And I don't want to give it away, but their lives change. And once you get to the end of that pilot, you'd crawl over broken glass to get to episode 2. And you can't ask for much more from a showmaker than that feeling.
Mm. And it looks like with the cast and stuff, you've sort of done a little bit Pack to the Rafters style in the sense that you've got a couple of well-known stars in there, but you've also mixing it up with a fresh new cast for people to be introduced to as well.
Yep, that's exactly right. I was talking about that cast with the boss this morning. There are a couple of people who will be known to the audience, but there are also a couple of standouts that will not be known to the audience. And I think, you're probably going to see a couple of new stars out of winners and losers, just as Rafters has given us a whole bunch of new stars.
Excellent. Just a couple of shows now that either haven't returned or people have asked about, or what's happening with these shows. So maybe in a word or a sentence, TV Burp, they said was going to come back maybe this year. Hasn't? Is that finished?
I personally love that show. I'd love to bring it back. I don't have the budget to do it right now, but one day that show will come back and it will work.
Excellent. Yeah, I love that one. 000 Heroes. I haven't seen that for a while.
Not going to come back.
A Medical Emergency? There hasn't been any new episodes.
We're still coming soon to 7, so, haven't made a call on doing more series, but certainly we have an unplayed series that's coming soon to 7.
Okay, Last Chance Surgery?
Don't think that'll be coming back. I think that observational documentary area is sort of been saturated. 7 was first to the sort of campground. We set up various tents. Now we poke our head outside the tent and see a whole bunch of other tents that aren't ours. I think probably, not going to come back.
Beyond the Darklands, that one?
It's a bit similar, the true crime genre. I think, probably getting overcrowded. Don't think we'll be going back there.
All right. Marriage Ref, what's happening with that? You had the Australian version, and then there was talk that the US version was coming up soon, and then that whole show disappeared. What's happening?
Still a work in progress, so sort of in a holding pattern. Nothing really to report fresh there at the moment.
Are we going to see the US one on 7 or one of the multi-channels?
Yeah, still in a holding pattern because you just got to be careful about running the American version of something when you might have the Australian version coming, etc.
Sure. And the last one, you Dancing with the Stars America. Now, you sort of alluded to on another podcast, not with me, on another one they were talking about, said, this would be really good for 7 too, and you were having a look into that.
I don't do podcasts with just anyone. I don't recall another podcast, but anyway. That
was with Media Week.
With the Stars, we would... Who? Media Week?
Yeah.
Who are they?
No. I don't know. Who are they? Exactly. But Dancing with the Stars
Dancing
America.
with the Stars US. Problem is the cast, some of the cast, and it's absolutely huge, I might add. It's over 20 million viewers it's come back with. Some of the cast, like the Hoff, who's actually dancing with Kim Wilson, Australia's Kim Wilson. But
Johnson.
Some of the cast you don't know. So as to whether or not it eventually appears on 7/2, it's a possibility, but it's not a definite.
All right. Fast tracking. Nine announced this morning they've got 2.5 Men, The Mentalist, Big Bang Theory, CSI, coming up this year. Are you planning on fast tracking anything this year? Any of the big shows?
We've certainly had discussions, but I'm not prepared to divulge the decision at this stage.
All right. The event starts on Monday as well. Anything you want to mention about that? Obviously, it's a big show. Opened up pretty big in America as well, so that starts Monday at 8:30.
It did. It considering it's on NBC and it had Chuck as a lead-in, that was a pretty phenomenal result for the event. Look, it's a very, very good pilot. It's a thrill ride. But let's be realistic. Our audience in Australia is smart, and they have had, Lost, Heroes, Flash Forward. These shows have started huge and then really sort of basically lost their way after a while. Less so with Lost, but certainly Heroes and Flash Forward. In our discussions with NBC, we've made it clear that, there are some pretty basic mistakes that we think were made. They keep saying that they have learnt from experience. Time will tell. Certainly I've heard episode 2 of the event is excellent, and I can promise anyone that if they tune in to see episode 1, they won't be disappointed. It's a real thrill ride, very well executed, and it's edge of your seat stuff.
Excellent. That's Monday, 8:30 on 7. And anything you can tell us about that's coming up? I mean, I know Iron Chef is coming. You've already announced that one. Is there anything you want to mention that's coming up for the rest of the year?
Iron Chef looks amazing, and I can let slip that I'm pretty sure one of the Iron Chefs gets beaten at some point during the series, which is a rarity. Beyond that, we're just casting Conviction Kitchen for next year, which, you know, if you know much about the format, all of the cast have a conviction or they're on probation for one thing or another. So that has been a fascinating and, I have to say, extremely emotional process, casting that show. But, you know, if that casting process is anything to go by, that is going to be an absolutely gripping series.
Yeah. Okay, so a couple more cooking shows this year and next year. I'm sure that's going to happen with the other networks too. Excellent. Look forward to those. Continue to wish the network all the best moving forward, and with 7 Mate, which launches after the AFL Grand Final this weekend. Tim, I know your time is very valuable, and I know you're off taking a well-deserved break, so have a great holiday, well-deserved, and thank you for joining us.
It's about 4 days.
Oh, is that it? I
I
assumed I heard you were having annual leave. I assumed that meant you were taking a few weeks off or something.
No, annual leave for about 4 days and then back on a plane. But that's life. I'm not complaining. And don't forget, when you're on annual leave, the ratings still come through at 8:30.
They do. Well, it's still well-deserved break, at least for 4 days anyway. Thanks for joining us on the...
No worries,
TV
mate.
Central.
Have a great day.
You too.
See ya.